I was 8 when I first realized that walls could hold memories. Our little house in Cedar Grove wasn't fancy. It had cracked tiles in the kitchen, a front door that groaned every time it opened, and a backyard with weeds taller than I was. But to me, it was a castle. It was where I learned how to ride a bike, where I made forts out of blankets, and where I cried into my pillow when my dad forgot my birthday, for the 3rd year in a row. My name is Lauren Hastings. I'm 28 now, living in Seattle, and working as a UX designer. I have a cat named Mango in an apartment with a rooftop view. From the outside, it probably looks like I've got it all figured out. But something has always felt unfinished. Like a chapter of my life was closed too early. That chapter began ending the day my parents, Mark and Dana, sat me down when I was 17. "We're selling the house," Dad said, not even looking at me. My heart dropped. "What? Why?" I asked, glancing at Mom for reassurance. "It's too much work," she said. "Too many repairs. We need a fresh start." They said it like it was a smart financial move. But I knew the truth. They were selling it because they didn't care. Not about the creaky floorboards, not about the tree I carved my name into, and definitely not about how it was the only stable thing in my life. I was being uprooted without a say. Within weeks, the house was gone. Sold to strangers. I wasn't even allowed to take everything from my room, just the essentials. My parents moved to a condo in the city and seemed to forget Cedar Grove even existed. But I never did. Years passed. I went to college in Oregon, then moved to Seattle. I visited my parents occasionally, but something had shifted between us. They were colder. Less interested in my life unless it made them look good. "Our daughter works in tech," they'd boast to friends, but barely remembered the name of my company. The final straw came at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. I brought up the house casually over dinner. "I drove through Cedar Grove last week," I said. "Saw the old place. It still looks the same." My mother barely looked up from her wine. "Why are you still hung up on that dump?" My dad chuckled. "Yeah, we dodged a bullet selling that money pit." I felt like I was talking about a lost friend, and they were spitting on its grave. That night, I cried in the guest room. I wasn't just mourning the house, I was mourning the love I thought I had from them. And that's when the idea formed. A ridiculous, impossible, deeply emotional idea. What if I bought the house back? It sounded crazy, even to me. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about reclaiming something that was stolen from me, something sacred. I started by searching property records. I found the name of the current owners, a retired couple named Jeff and Nora Carlin. I wrote them a letter, not a cold offer, but a heartfelt note explaining what the house meant to me. I expected nothing. But 3 weeks later, I got a reply. "Dear Lauren, we've been thinking about selling. And after reading your letter, we'd be honored if the home went back to someone who truly loved it. Let's talk." I stared at the message for a full 10 minutes before I could breathe again. Over the next 3 months, I poured my savings, my bonuses, even a small loan into making it happen. It wasn't cheap. Seattle paychecks don't stretch far in Cedar Grove real estate, but I didn't care. I wanted it. I needed it. The day I got the keys, I stood on the front porch, my fingers trembling as I touched the chip paint on the door. I walked through every room slowly. The kitchen still smelled faintly of cinnamon. My old bedroom, though repainted, had the same sunlight that used to wake me up for school. The tree in the backyard? Still had my name carved in the bark. Faded, but there. I spent the next few weeks fixing things up. Not renovating, just restoring. I wanted the house to breathe again, to feel loved. It was like healing an old wound, not erasing the scar, but honoring it. And then came the idea for the reveal. My parents had always acted like the house was a burden. So I wanted to show them it wasn't. I invited them over under the pretense of a surprise family brunch. I told them to meet me at a new address in Cedar Grove. They were confused but intrigued. Mom was excited about anything that sounded upscale. Dad grumbled about the drive but agreed. They had no idea what was waiting for them. As I set the table that morning, laying out pancakes, mimosas, and fresh fruit, I felt an odd calmness. Like I was about to reclaim something bigger than a house. I was about to reclaim me. I stood by the window as their car pulled into the driveway. Mom's jaw dropped. Dad blinked. They didn't recognize the house at first. I had repainted the siding, planted flowers, replaced the old mailbox. But the shape was still there. The bones were the same. And when they realized where they were, The color drained from their faces. "Lauren," Mom said slowly, stepping out of the car. "What is this?" I smiled. "Welcome home." My mom stood frozen, her heels sinking slightly into the gravel as she stared up at the house. My dad scratched his head, looking like he'd seen a ghost. This looks like," he started. "Our old house," I finished for him, stepping onto the porch. "Except now, it's mine." They didn't move. I smiled, pretending this wasn't the most emotionally charged moment of my adult life. "Come in." I made brunch. My mom blinked a few times and stepped forward hesitantly. "You bought it? But how? Why?" Dad muttered, "This place was a wreck when we left it." I held the door open. "You'll see." They stepped inside, and for a moment, the years fell away. The scent of cinnamon lingered in the air, just like when Mom used to bake her Sunday rolls. The hardwood floors gleamed. The photos I'd hung along the hallway were a mix of old and new, me as a child on the front steps, and me now, holding the keys. My dad looked around with a puzzled face. "It looks different. But the same," Mom said softly, her eyes scanning the living room. "You kept the fireplace?" "Restored it," I said. "It still works." She didn't say much after that. Just slowly walked into the kitchen, like she was afraid the past might reach out and grab her. I poured orange juice and pointed to the dining table, already set with pancakes, berries, bacon, and warm biscuits. "I don't understand," Dad said as he sat. "You really bought this place? Out of all the homes you could have picked?" I joined them, picking up a mimosa. "You always called this house a burden. But to me, it was the only place that felt like home." Mom cleared her throat. "Lauren, that was years ago. We did what we had to do. The repairs were endless. The taxes. And I understand that," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But it never felt like you considered how much this place meant to me. One day, we were a family in a home. The next, it was sold, and I was told to move on." Dad looked down at his plate. "Well, we figured you'd forget it eventually. But I didn't." The room went quiet, save for the soft hum of the fan overhead. Mom finally spoke. "You invited us here just to show off?" I looked her in the eye. "No. I invited you here because I wanted you to understand what this house meant. And because, despite everything, I still wanted to share it with you." They didn't know what to say. I think it unsettled them, seeing me not as the obedient daughter who stayed quiet, but as a woman with a plan, one that didn't include their approval. After a few awkward bites, Mom looked around again and asked, "How much did you pay for it?" I shrugged. "Enough. The previous owners were kind. They'd lived here for 10 years and were ready to downsize. I think they were happy to hand it over to someone who saw it as more than just property." Dad chuckled, dry and skeptical. "Well, I hope you're ready for the problems. That roof leaked every winter. I fixed it." Mom raised an eyebrow. "And the plumbing?" "Redone." "Wow," she muttered. "You must be making more than you told us." That sting again. She couldn't just say she was proud. She had to turn it into something else. I set down my fork. "You know, it's funny. You always saw this house as a money pit. But for me, every crack in the wall told a story. That mark near the door frame? That's where I measured my height every birthday. The dent in the kitchen cabinet? Dad put that there when he slammed it shut after the Seahawks lost. The window in my old room? I used to watch the stars from there and dream about leaving this town." They both looked a little stunned. "It wasn't a perfect house," I continued. "But it was mine, even when it wasn't. And now it truly is." Silence again. This time heavier. Denser. Then Dad asked, "Why now?" I took a breath. "Because I'm done trying to get your approval. For years, I tried to make you proud, good grades, good job, clean apartment. But you never really saw me. You just saw the version of me that made you look good in front of your friends." Mom shifted in her seat. "That's not fair. Isn't it? When was the last time you asked how I really was? Not what project I was working on or how much I was making. But how I felt." They both went quiet. I stood up and walked toward the back door, gesturing for them to follow. We stepped out into the yard. The tree was still there, older now, but strong. I pointed to the trunk. "See that?" They leaned closer. My name was still carved into the bark, along with the date, 2004. "You left the house," I said. "But I never really did." My mom covered her mouth. Dad whispered, "I forgot that was there." I didn't. A breeze passed through the yard, rustling the grass. "I'm not asking for anything," I said. I just wanted you to see what I built. What I rebuilt. I'm not your little girl anymore. But I'll always be the kid who once believed this house was magic. They didn't respond right away. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe they finally realized what they'd thrown away, not just a house, but a part of their daughter. After a long silence, my mom finally said, "You did a good job, Lauren. The place looks beautiful." It wasn't exactly "I'm proud of you." But for her, it might have been the closest she could get. I smiled politely. "Thank you." But inside, I knew. This brunch wasn't about food. It wasn't even about the house. It was about me, standing on the porch of my childhood, no longer waiting for their love, just reclaiming my own. After my parents left that afternoon, the house settled into a strange silence. Not an empty one, more like a heavy quiet, the kind that follows after a storm has passed. I walked through the room slowly, my fingers grazing familiar edges, the dent in the wall behind the door, the scratch marks on the banister, the chipped tile in the kitchen. Each one a memory. Each one a scar we all carried. But there was one place I hadn't revisited since I bought the house, the attic. Growing up, the attic was always off limits. Dad used to say it was unsafe, but I always suspected it was more about what they didn't want me to find. It was where we stored everything they didn't want to deal with, old boxes, broken furniture, forgotten photo albums. The ladder creaked as I pulled it down. Dust floated in the air like tiny ghosts, dancing in the afternoon light. I climbed slowly, flashlight in hand. The attic smelled like time, dry wood, paper, and a trace of mothballs. I scanned the room, boxes labeled with faded markers, a rocking horse, an old lamp, and what looked like my childhood toy chest. My heart clenched. I opened box after box, flipping through old report cards, faded Christmas cards, and random junk from what felt like a completely different life. Then, tucked between two moldy couch cushions, I found something odd, a thick envelope with my name on it. Lauren. Written in my mom's handwriting. No address. No stamp. Just my name. I sat cross-legged on the floor and opened it slowly, like peeling back layers of history. Inside was a letter. 2 pages, handwritten, dated April 2, 2015, right around the time we moved out. Dear Lauren. If you're reading this, it means you've come back here. Somehow, some way. I don't know why I'm writing this, except that I feel I owe you something. Maybe not answers, but honesty. And I haven't always been good at giving you that. You loved this house more than any of us did. To your father, it was a responsibility. To me, it was a reminder. Of things we lost, of things we never had. I tried to make it a home, but some days, I just saw the cracks. When we sold it, we didn't ask you how you felt. We made a decision and left you out of it. That was wrong. We were wrong. You deserved better than that. There are things I've never told you. Like how we were in debt. Like how your father lost his job and kept it from you. Like how the night before we told you about the sale, I sat in the kitchen and cried until sunrise. We didn't leave because we wanted to. We left because we were drowning. And you were just collateral damage. If you ever find this, I hope you're okay. I hope you've built a life full of the love we didn't always know how to give you. And I hope, if you ever come back, you'll forgive us. Love. Mom. I didn't realize I was crying until the ink started to blur on the letter. My mom, stoic, sharp-tongued, hard to please, had written this. Tucked it away where no one would find it. Maybe even hoped I never would. And yet, here I was. I folded the letter and sat still for a long time. The air felt thicker up there. Maybe it was the dust. Maybe it was everything I'd carried all these years finally pressing down. I climbed back down and walked straight into the kitchen, where my phone sat charging. I stared at it for a full minute before dialing. Hello? Mom's voice was cautious. I found your letter, I said softly. A pause. Oh. You wrote it in 2015. Another pause. I didn't know if I should leave it. Your father didn't even know. I thought. Maybe someday you'd come back. And maybe you'd understand. I do now, I whispered. At least more than I did before. She didn't say anything. But I heard her breath catch, the way it used to when she was trying not to cry. You could have told me, I said. I could have handled it. You were a kid. I was your kid. Silence. Then, I'm sorry, Lauren. For all of it. For shutting you out. For acting like it didn't matter. It mattered, I said. It always did. A long, fragile pause stretched between us. I was proud of you, you know, she said finally. Even when I didn't say it. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. Thank you. After we hung up, I stood there for a while, unsure of what to do with everything I was feeling. The next day, I decided to restore the attic. I cleared out the boxes, kept the letter in a frame, and transformed the space into a reading room. A quiet place. A healing place. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Mom started calling more. Not to ask about my job or money, but just to talk. To ask how I was sleeping. If I was eating enough. If I was okay. And for the first time in years, I believed she actually cared. I even invited her over again, just her this time. We sat on the back porch with iced tea and watched the sun set behind the tree line. This place really is beautiful, she said. It always was, I replied. You just stopped seeing it. She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. I think I stopped seeing a lot of things. I looked at her, not as my mother, not as the woman who sold our home, but as someone flawed, trying, maybe even growing. And just like that, something old between us softened. A few months passed, and with each one, the house became more of a home again. I repainted the living room the soft, sunflower yellow it used to be. I planted herbs in the windowsill like Mom once did. I even found the old wind chimes Dad had built from bottle caps and fishing line, and hung them on the back porch where they used to rattle on windy days. Something was changing, not just in the house, but in me. The anger that had burned so bright for years was beginning to cool. It didn't disappear. But it softened, the way jagged stones do after years of rolling in the river. Then one afternoon, I had an idea. I decided to host an open house, not to sell the place, but to invite people back into it. Neighbors. Old friends. Even my family. A way to reclaim what the house used to mean, connection, not conflict. I printed out invitations and hand-delivered a few to homes I remembered from childhood. Most people were shocked to see me. Mrs. Tucker next door actually dropped her gardening shears. "You're back?" she gasped. "Yeah," I smiled. "I bought it back." She blinked. "Good Lord. If your dad knew that, he'd..." "I told him," I said, gently. "He knows. I even sent one to my parents. Just one invitation. I didn't know if they'd come. But I needed to extend the gesture." The day of the open house arrived bright and cool. I baked cookies using Mom's old recipe and brewed coffee that made the whole kitchen smell like Saturday mornings from 15 years ago. I opened every window, let the breeze carry the scent into every corner of the house. The first guests trickled in around noon. Mr. Colby from across the street brought his grandson. The Marshalls showed up with a photo album filled with pictures of me as a kid playing in their backyard. We laughed, told stories, and walked room to room reminiscing. People shared memories I had long forgotten, like the time I built a snow fort in the front yard so big it blocked the mailman, or how I used to charge admission for lemonade on summer afternoons. Then, just after 2 o'clock, I saw a familiar car pull up. My stomach flipped. It was them. My parents stepped out, cautiously, like they weren't sure if they were allowed to walk up the driveway. My mom held a small tin in her hands, probably her famous blueberry muffins. My dad wore a navy jacket I hadn't seen in years. They looked older than I remembered. Smaller somehow. I opened the front door and stepped outside before they could knock. "Hi," I said. "Hi," Mom replied, her voice tight. Dad gave a stiff nod. "House looks good." "Thanks. I brought these," Mom said, handing me the tin. "Your favorite. If they still are." "They are," I said, swallowing hard. We stood in awkward silence for a beat before I stepped aside. "Come in." They walked through the door like guests in someone else's life. Dad lingered by the entryway, running his hand along the wood trim. Mom looked around, eyes wide, taking in the changes and the things I'd left exactly the same. "The wind chimes," she whispered. "You kept them." "I found them in the garage. Thought they still sounded nice." She nodded. "They do." For the next hour, they moved through the house slowly, like walking through memories. I noticed how often Dad paused to touch things, door frames, light switches, the back of the couch. Like he was trying to remember what it felt like to belong here. In the dining room, I had set out a table with old photos and mementos, school drawings, report cards, a picture of me with a missing front tooth standing in front of this very house. Mom stared at one of the photos for a long time. "You know," she said softly, "this house never felt as warm as it does today." "That's because it wasn't," I said. "Not always." She didn't argue. "Instead," she said, I wish we'd made it feel like this when we had the chance. I looked at her. So do I. There was another silence, but this time it didn't feel sharp. It felt real. Like two people finally standing in the same truth. Later, as guests began to leave, my dad lingered on the back porch. I joined him. I didn't know how much I missed this place, he said, gazing out at the yard. I didn't think it mattered. It mattered to me. He nodded. I see that now. I hesitated, then said, you could have just told me the truth. About the money. The stress. I wouldn't have hated you for it. He looked down. I didn't want you to see me as weak. I never did, I said quietly. A long breath escaped him. I'm proud of you, Lauren. For taking this place and turning it into something again. For not letting it rot. Thanks, Dad. Before they left, Mom turned to me at the door. I don't know how to say this without it sounding small, she said, but thank you. For letting us come back. Even just for a day. I hugged her. For the first time in years. It's still home, I whispered. She pulled back, tears in her eyes. Yeah. I guess it is. And when the door closed behind them, I didn't feel empty. I felt whole. The days after the open house felt strangely quiet. Peaceful, almost. For the first time since I bought the place, I didn't wake up with a racing heart or a bitter memory weighing me down. The house felt balanced. Like it had exhaled along with me. I received a few thank you notes from neighbors, sweet, handwritten ones with stories I hadn't heard in years. One woman, Mrs. Castillo, slipped a faded Polaroid of me and her son playing in the sprinklers when we were 6. This place was magic once, she wrote. You've brought that back. But the letter that changed everything came a week later. It was from my dad. He'd never been much of a writer, so the neat cursive on the envelope surprised me. Inside, on lined paper, were words I never thought I'd see. Lauren. I owe you more than an apology. I owe you the truth I should have told you years ago. When we sold the house, I felt like I'd failed you. Not because of the sale, but because I'd built a world where you thought your home could be taken from you just like that. The truth is, I didn't know how to ask for help. I was ashamed. And I let pride make decisions that cost us everything, not just bricks and wood, but trust. Seeing what you've done with this house. It broke me open in the best way. You reminded me of who we were supposed to be. If there's ever a way back, I want to take it. I want us to be a family again. Even if it takes time. Proud to be your father. Raymond. I cried reading that letter. Not because it made everything okay, but because it finally made sense. That weekend, I invited them over again. This time, it wasn't for a house tour or a symbolic gesture. I just wanted them to have dinner. When Mom walked in, she brought her old casserole dish, the one I thought she'd thrown away. It still works, she said, smiling shyly. Though it's seen better days. Dad helped me fix the back screen door before we ate. We didn't talk much during the repair, but the silence was intense. It was the kind of silence that exists between people who are simply doing something together, mending things, piece by piece. At dinner, we laughed more than I expected. Mom teased Dad about burning toast every Sunday for a year, and I reminded her about the time she let me paint my room neon green and instantly regretted it. We were remembering, but we were also rewriting. That night, after they left, I stood in the doorway long after their car disappeared down the street. I looked around the living room, the kitchen, the photos now lining the hallway again. It was my home. But it no longer felt like a fortress or a monument to pain. It felt open. That Monday, I made a decision. I walked into a community center I'd passed a dozen times but never entered. They had a small youth program, kids from tough homes, many of whom bounced around between relatives or shelters. They needed volunteers. And more importantly, they needed spaces that felt safe. I asked if they needed a weekend program. A space for quiet. For art. For storytelling. For kids to just be. When they asked if I had a location in mind, I said yes. My house. The coordinator blinked. Your actual house? Yeah, I said. It used to be the only place I felt like myself. Then it became the place I lost that. Now. I want it to be a place where someone else can feel whole. The program started small. Just 6 kids that first Saturday. I taught them how to paint planters. We made peanut butter cookies. I let them choose a wall in the garage to paint a mural on. One boy painted a tree with bright orange roots and blue leaves. When I asked what it was, he said, "It's a family tree that's still growing." That hit me harder than I expected. The mural stayed. Every week, it grew: handprints, symbols, stories. Some kids came back. Some didn't. But the house became something it had never fully been, a place that welcomed everyone, not just those who belonged. One afternoon, Dad stopped by unannounced. He stood in the doorway, watching a little girl braid another's hair on the porch swing. "This," he said quietly, "this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen happen here." He looked at me. "I'm sorry we didn't know how to give this to you." "You're helping give it now," I replied. And that's how things stayed. I didn't need the past to vanish. I just needed it to soften, to fold into the present like old paper tucked into a new book. A few months later, on the anniversary of when they sold the house, I hosted a community barbecue. Everyone came: neighbors, kids, staff, even my parents. We ate under string lights in the backyard and danced to songs from every decade. At one point, Dad took the mic and tapped it awkwardly. "I just want to say, I was wrong to think this place was about ownership," he said. "It's not about whose name is on the deed. It's about who shows up, who keeps it alive." He looked at me. "And no one's done that better than Lauren." There was a pause, then applause. But I didn't need it. I already felt full. That night, I sat on the porch swing alone, wind chimes softly ringing. The stars blinked above like old friends. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was trying to reclaim something. I had already built something new. Right here, where it all began.